This is lesson 2-3A. We're going to be learning about absolute value. So I want us to start by looking at this definition of absolute value. The absolute value of a number is its distance from zero on a number line. Its distance from zero on a number line. Distance is always positive. That's important here. So when we talk about absolute value, we are going to be finding how far away a number is from zero. And if you're talking about how far away something is from zero, you're talking about its distance. It is always going to be positive. So in your notebook, I want you to write this definition for absolute value. So the absolute value is the distance from zero on a number line. And it's important for us to remember that absolute value is always positive. So now we have to understand what that means, the absolute value. In math, you are going to see it written with two longer lines. So we're going to have a longer line, a number, let's say -5, and then another longer line. So when we read this as the absolute value of -5 is what? So let's think of a number line here. If I'm going to make my number line, and you should be sketching this in your notebook, we have 0.0. So -5 is going to be going to the left of 0, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. Okay, so I'm finding what is the absolute value of -5. How far away is -5 from 0? That's what the question is asking us. How far away is -5 from 0? Well, let's count. If I put my pen on 0 and I count all the way to that -5, how far is it? So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The distance from 0 to -5 is 5. And that makes sense because our hint with absolute value is that it is always positive. And 5 is positive because we don't see that negative sign. Let's see if I ask you, what is the absolute value of 5? Now, you want to make sure that those absolute value signs are longer than that number 5 because you don't want it to look like a 151. 151, this is where your handwriting is very important. So what is the absolute value of 5? Okay, let's think of a number line again. So I'm starting at 0. I'm traveling 5 to the right. So what is the distance from 0 to 5? Again, I'm going to start at 0. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The distance or the absolute value here of 5, the distance from 0 to 5 is 5. So again, I want you to notice that absolute value, whether it was -5, the absolute value of -5 was 5. The absolute value of 5 is 5. Both -5 and 5 are the same distance from 0. Okay, for example, 2 here, I want us to find the absolute value of -4. So if I look at A, I'm finding the absolute value of -4. Well, first, let's plot -4 on this number line. So if I start at 0, which way should I move to get to -4? I'm going to move left 4, 1. Oops, I'm sorry. So from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's point A. So what is the absolute value of -4? How far is -4 from 0? -4 is 4 away from 0. The distance between 0 and -4 is 4. Now let's try B. What is the absolute value of 0? Let's put 0 on this number line. What is the distance from 0 to 0? What is the absolute value of 0? The absolute value of 0 will just be 0. And now let's look at C. C says, what is the absolute value of 3? Let's put 3 on our number line. What is the absolute value of 3? How far away is 3 from 0? Let's find the distance. Just put your pen on 0 and count. 1, 2, 3. So what is the absolute value of 3? The absolute value of 3 is 3. So the key when we are finding the absolute value is to remember that absolute value is always what? Absolute value is always positive. When we talk about distance, distance is always a positive unit. I want us to look at one word problem here, and then tomorrow's video is going to be more word problems and looking at these absolute values to describe quantities. So if we look at example 1 here, it says stock prices rise and fall during the year. The table shows the overall change in the price of a company's stock from year to year. During which 2 years was the overall change in the stock price the greatest? So when we talk about stock, we're talking about money, and people buy stocks to invest in a company. So we're talking, and the prices of those stocks change. That's where these key words here, rise and fall, come into play, because the prices change year to year, even day to day. So on this chart here, they have the stocks. So in 2015, the change in the price of stock was $11. In 2014, $19. 2013, negative $34. And 2012, $6. So the question here is saying, during which 2 years was the overall change in the stock price the greatest? So we're not asking where was the price the biggest? Where was the price the most expensive? We can all look at this and say, oh, the price is most expensive in 2014 when it cost $13 more. That's not what the question's asking us. The question is asking us the overall change in stock. So maybe it was $20 more than normal. Maybe it was $20 less than normal. Whether it's positive or negative doesn't matter. This is where finding the absolute value is going to help us. So let's start by finding the absolute value of 11. What is the absolute value of 11? The absolute value of 11 is just 11. So in 2015, the change in price was 11. In 2014, what was the absolute value of 19? The absolute value of 19 is 19. Remember, absolute value is always positive. Now let's look at 2013. 2013, we're going to find what was the absolute value of negative 34. What is the absolute value of negative 34? The absolute value of negative 34 is 34. And lastly, because remember, absolute value is always positive, what is the absolute value of 6? The absolute value of 6 would be positive 6. So now let's go back and look at the question. During which 2 years was the overall, so whether it be a positive or a negative change, it doesn't matter, was the overall change in the stock price the greatest? Well, let's look at our answers here. We're comparing 11, 19, 34, and 6. Which two numbers were the greatest? 19 and 34 were the greatest change. So that means our answer here would be 2014 and 2013. So that's just our first example of how using absolute value can help us to answer questions.